Are the cookies on the bottom shelf? That's the question. Are the cookies on the bottom shelf? I once sat in a packed room listening to the president of a Christian organization. I'll call him Matt. He ended his lecture telling us to put the cookies on the bottom shelf so that everybody could reach them. He meant keeping Bible teaching simple and basic in content and in delivery. That almost sounds right, doesn't it? It did to most who were in the room. They responded like bobble-headed dolls, nodding knowingly in agreement, while scribbling down every word like the new students at London Center in Chapter 1 of Huxley's Brave New World. But then my friend stood to give his talk. His opening lines critiqued his boss's, the president's, closing comments. He started something like this: "Matt, that cookies on the bottom shelf thing sure sounds good. But the problem is, it's just wrong. Put the cookies on the top shelf, on the top shelf. If you can't reach them, grow up." You know, I agree more with my friend than I did with Matt. Millennial, if you're a de-churched millennial, you're going to identify with this. I said de-churched millennial. By de-churched, I mean you used to go to church. Maybe you were shut down when you asked probing questions, or just got tired of pulpit pablum and bad rock music. You gave up on church. You left. You might even feel that you were driven out, or you feel that you didn't leave church, but that church left you. All of that is what I mean by de-churched. And I can tell you, I understand. You see, in many ways, the church left me too. Here's a word of warning. If you're a church person, this video will probably irritate you, if it hasn't already. Be irritated. But be irritated by the reality of the causes of the millennial exodus. But if you must be irritated with someone, please be irritated with me. Don't be irritated with millennials. Over the past more than a decade, many churches went through a self-induced metamorphosis. They were trying to keep you millennials in the house. They squeezed themselves into the mold of your outside world by removing religious symbols, like the cross, by abandoning stained glass sanctuaries for campus-like auditoriums, by swapping out pews for theater seats, by redefining the dress code, by dumbing down the content, and in music, by substituting decibels for depth. In many ways, the church almost became market-driven. But the worst part of the metamorphosis for you as a millennial was that the church tried to exhort, encourage, and entertain you to believe, behave, and belong, but never equipped you to do so. Here that is again. The church tried to exhort, encourage, and entertain you to believe, behave, and belong, but never equipped you to do so. They put the cookies on the lower shelves, seldom or never put any on the higher shelves, and if they did, they didn't equip you to reach that high. And now you may be seeking some form of true spirituality outside of the church or in the liturgical church, but you were never really equipped to do so. The church's self-metamorphosis backfired, resulting in more caterpillars than butterflies. There's a great example of this problem in the middle of the New Testament letter to the Hebrews. The theme of that letter is the superiority of Jesus as a better revelation, a better being, a better priest, and a better sacrifice for sin. In chapter 5, a comparison begins between Jesus and an Old Testament, obscure, pre-Levitical priest, Abraham's peer, Melchizedek. Please, stay with me. Melchizedek is important. You'll see why. But you're probably saying, who? Mel who? I never heard of this Mel guy. Or you're thinking, I've heard of him, but I really don't know anything at all about him. And you felt somewhat perplexed by, or maybe lost in, my description of him. De-churched millennial? That's my point. You should have been taught about Melchizedek, but you won't find him on the bottom shelf. Please stick with me. You might see yourself in that first century letter to the Hebrews. Melchizedek is mentioned starting in chapter 5 of Hebrews. Listen to what the author injects before continuing with Melchizedek all the way on into chapter 7. Here it is, from Hebrews. Concerning him, the him is Melchizedek, concerning him we have much to say, and it is hard to explain since you have become dull of hearing. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you have need again for someone to teach you the elementary principles of the words of God, and you have come to need milk and not solid food. For everyone who partakes only of milk is not accustomed to the word of righteousness, for he is an infant, but solid food is for the mature. What was their problem? Well, the same as today. They weren't equipped. They weren't equipped in content or in practice. And you probably weren't either. An attempt was made to motivate you, but you were never mentored. You see, when you're fed only motivational milk, you never fully grow up. In a sense, you become a veal calf Christian rather than a strong steer, a spiritual toddler, not a mature disciple. So, millennial, what should you do? To start, understand the diagnosis. Rewatch this video and go back and watch Disciple or Just a Believer, an earlier Just a Question video. You really need to understand and accept the diagnosis. And you might want to check out discipleorbeliever.org for more information, especially the odd-numbered articles 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. That's discipleorbeliever.org. On smartphones, those PDF articles are easily landscape readable. And stay tuned for one of the next Just a Question videos. It's high-shelf stuff. It's about the Trinity. And if you're a church person and are still watching, here's a suggestion. You may be saying, John, what you're saying is true, but not in my church. I challenge you to watch that earlier Disciple or Believer video and prayerfully read the even-numbered articles on discipleorbeliever.org, and also, and especially, Article 9, the strengths and limits of the pulpit. And for all of us, there are some teachers, some preachers, and even some churches who put the cookies on the high shelves. Sometimes we have to search to find who stocks those high shelves, online, in person, or in church. And then when we found them, if we can't reach those high shelves, we need people, those high shelf stockers, to help us grow, to stretch us to greater heights. That's part of my purpose for justaquestion.org, to help you grow while I'm challenging the status quo. And one more thought. In the earlier video, Is There a Millennial Exodus?, I mentioned more content on that subject. The video you just watched is some of that more content. However, if you are a post-millennial church or de-churched person, and that Melchizedek stuff was convicting, here are two serious questions. Were you ever really equipped? And have you ever mentored a young believer? I'm John Morris. I'll see you on the next Just a Question.